uses the standard security roles to access to documents, batches, and master records. So as far as Great Plains is concerned, there's no change to security other than you already have. So if you have access to a purchase order before, you still have access to purchase orders. That just works the same. And SharePoint creates permissions for network users during the workflow configuration process by adding users to the SharePoint groups. And these are pretty much behind the scenes. You don't have to go into them. It just takes care of it for you. So the workflow security groups, the administrator can specify a manager for each type of workflow, and we looked at that. They can configure the workflow calendar. So what that means, you define the days that you're open for business, and then the escalation clause that's built in after so many days will skip the weekend or only count the days you designate to be work days. The administrator can view all the workflow tasks and act on any workflow task regardless of who's assigned to it. They can view all the documents, master records, and batches. They can generate reports. They configure the workflow alert messages, and they can delegate workflow tasks. So essentially, the administrator can do everything. Then you have the individual workflow type of managers. They can create as many workflows of that type that they're given the management for. They can view all the tasks for that type. They can act on any task for that type. So normally what you do is you would have the escalation go to the workflow manager for things that get missed. You can view all the documents, you can generate reports, and you can configure the workflow alert messages settings, and you can also delegate the workflow tasks. The originator can submit documents. They can view all the tasks associated with the workflow. They can view all documents, master records, and batches associated with workflow type. They can configure their own workflow alert message settings, and they can delegate their workflow tasks. And then the approvers or the delegates can also submit the documents. They can view the tasks. They can act on the tasks. They can view all documents, and they can configure their own workflow alert and delegate their tasks. And then, of course, the read-only can just essentially read only. It's all they can do. So the action. So if you're an originator and you're on a batch, you're on a document, you can submit it for approval or save it for later. That's really all you can do with workflow at the document or batch level. The approver can approve it, reject it, delegate it, request a change, and we'll try one of those a little bit later so we can see how that change works. And another feature is that you can use internal Great Plains lists to act on multiple documents at the same time. So you guys are familiar with the list. You know, you go to the module center and you see the list for like all the purchase orders. You can select 5 or 6 purchase orders at the same time, and then you have that action bar on top, and you can actually approve all of them in one fell swoop if you want to. So you can streamline this a little bit. And for task escalation, which means there's no action by the due date, you can take no action, you can delegate to the next approver, to a specific person, or to automatically approve or reject.
How does it work with Great Plains, say, on the purchase order in this instance where somebody created a purchase order but sent it off for approval, it gets rejected, but the purchase order still exists in Great Plains. So I guess it becomes, maybe it just becomes nothing. Do they just void it?
Well, yeah, it depends on the case. I mean, what you want to do. Most of the time, I don't think they would reject it and delete it. They'd probably say, change this. You know, it's, you know.
So would it require a change order then on PO?
No, you just edit the PO and then submit it again.
Because it's still not.
Yeah,
final.
yeah. Now, I'm assuming, I haven't tested this, that you wouldn't be able to receive on it until it's been approved.
Okay.
And I know that when you do.
That logic into it.
Yep. And I know on batches you can't post them until they've been approved. The post button's gone. So these tasks can have different type of status, and you'll see these in the different reports. Either it's not submitted, no approval needed, submitted, pending approval, pending change, approved, or rejected. And then we saw we can put a low priority on it, a normal priority, or a high priority, and the different users will see that when they work with the workflow. So this is, again, a summation of the workflow step. And we went through that with the purchase order approval. And the main thing here to remember is that we can put an action in there as well as approval in the workflow. So now I think we're going to look at workflow examples, the approval examples. So this might be a simple workflow. And we've got Sam that submits a purchase order here. And Frank must approve if that purchase order is greater than 1,000. And Sue must approve if it's greater than 5,000. And Ann must approve if it's greater than 10,000. So it flows through these steps and automatically gets, moved up the line as things happen. Now you can have a converging step workflow. So in this example, if the vendor is Acme Widgets, it gets sent down here, and anything over 5,000 also gets sent up here, and then they both get routed back to this step where Ann must always approve every single purchase order. So again, the design and the planning will make a big difference when you set this up.
Can it approve based on vendor but class ID?
Remember we had that drop down and all those fields. So if those fields are available, we can put them in the, and we can check that too, see if that's available. I would assume it would be, because that makes sense to have it that way. Okay, so this example would be a multiple first step approval process. So you'll notice that if any one of these three vendors are in the purchase order, they're going to go to a different person. So essentially we've got approvers running a particular vendor account here. And then after they've approved their own accounts, then it would go to Frank for the other monetary approval. Now, if the purchase order didn't fall into one of these vendors, then you could set it up so it skips those and just goes to the Frank step immediately without having to go through those first three steps. Now, you could also have a multiple path workflow, and it's not limited to 2, so you could create a number of paths based on how you want that to go through the approval process. So Bob must always approve anything that, if it's to the Acme company, but if it's not Acme company, he will not be involved at all. It'll go through this other route. So this is really, just the typical one path or the other path. So it makes this decision that just flows through these. So you could make this however many paths you wanted to make that happen. So again, when you have multiple approvers in the same area at the same step, you have those three options. Take the first response. So the first one to approve it, and boom, it's moved on. Or the majority must approve. So if you have a high dollar level for these approvers, 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5, whatever you have there. Or you can set up so everybody must approve, and before it goes into the system to be worked on. Okay, I think Judy said we had lunch ready. Rob, do you want to confirm that, or? Any questions?
If you have multiple people and it just takes the first response, do the other people get alerted, or do they just go in and see that it's already been approved?
You can set them up to be on the alert list when it is approved. Yeah, so that's, it has that box there, remember at the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's part of the planning process. What do you want it to do when it flows through this workflow? Other questions? Do we like it so far? Looking pretty interesting. How many of you guys
What
think?
about attachment? Let's say they're like, you need to attach a contract to the purchase order, attach other documents that would flow with it.
Well, you remember that the purchase order has the ability to be approved on the purchase order screen. So you would make the attachments at that level. And you'd probably put an action item that says, please review contract. And so when you complete the action item, then the approval item would come up after that.
So they have all stakes in that document.
Yeah, so I don't think we could put an attachment in the notification email.
In that case, we have to go to it.
I think so.
If you want to.
Yeah, if the contract is attached to the PO and you want them to finish that action item, they'd have to go there to look at that action item, which is the contract, before they could say, yes, I completed it. So we good, Rob?
We're good to go. One last thing, though. Some of the things we've seen here are pretty good as far as the workflow. But working with government agencies, I've noticed that they really need more in the requisition side. So what didn't come up here is you don't have what they call line item approval. Okay? And so if you need that type of requisition, then we've got to look at a different product than even the Microsoft requisition tool to do those kind of things. So just keep that in mind. Okay? We're ready to go.
Okay, I guess lunch is right around the corner and back
We'll go this way.
this way?
Yeah,
Okay.
come right out here and just follow around. You've been there before. Everybody here is on. You haven't, so push this out of the way. You guys know how to do it. Step. Right. Look good, I got. I'm a big growing boy. It's going the wrong way. I'm growing the wrong way. Oh, growing the wrong way. Uh-oh. Right.
Let me introduce you to Gary.
No, Megan, COO. I wish I was that.
Financial director.
There you go.